Welcome to Just a Farm Wife with your host, Tara Emerson. Tara is a farm wife, photographer, mom, podcaster, author, public speaker, and much more. On this podcast, Tara takes listeners on a journey through all aspects of life and how we can create future growth. This podcast helps to empower women to believe they are more than the labeling that society hands them. And remember, you are never just in anything.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Just a Farm Wife with your host, Tara Emerson. Today I have Tanya Wieler from Dakota Dynamics. She is a human resource consultant that specializes in local government, leadership, and personnel management support. She has a bachelor's from NDSU in Ag Systems Management and minors in speech communication and business. She resides in rural Pembina County with her husband and 3 kids, and she has always been around farming in some sort of capacity her whole life. And I think that she's incredibly important to our topics here on Just a Farm Wife because I know that I would have benefited from knowing someone like her when I started farming. She has a lot of knowledge, and I would really like for you to hear what she has to say. So, Tanya, welcome.
Thank you.
I'm very excited for you to be here. You and I have had conversations in different regions of our lives.
Yep.
And they've never started out with, oh, hey, let's talk about human resources. But for some reason, we always end up going there.
Yeah.
And I have loved learning about your business and the things that you work on. And you are such an articulate and kind and wonderful person that I think that anybody could benefit from anything that you have to say.
Oh, well, that's very kind of you. Thank you. Very flattering.
Well, you deserve it. You're
Thank you.
very good at communicating and looking at things from an observational point of view in order to accomplish goals,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Like every business and every company has goals and they have values, even if they don't think they do, even if
Yep.
they're not on paper.
Yeah, absolutely.
You always have goals and values in whatever company you run. And farming is that type of business where you may not necessarily write that stuff down.
I think that's very true, probably. Yeah, I think there's a lot of that going on. And in the ag world in general, I think there's probably a lack of formality when it comes to things like that, which isn't good, bad, or otherwise. It's just the way it is, right?
Right.
Yeah. But yeah, I think there's a lot of room for growth in those areas when you just kind of sit back and look at the people skills of everybody involved and maybe how you can capitalize on those skills and how you could pour into people, perhaps,
Right.
when that's maybe not ever been on your radar. You know, everyone's just, you're there to get a job done. You're there to just, we have X, Y, Z to get done, and we probably have a really limited time to do it because
Right.
farming is seasonal.
Right.
Yeah.
So one thing that Tanya does talk about is how there's 2 different roles or 2 different sides of human resources. And one is a technical side and one is a strategy side. And the technical side are the things that you write down and how you pay people and the goals that you're trying to create. Those are the things that you write down. And then there's also strategy. And we, as farmers, you're creating a strategy every single day. And so oftentimes you don't even realize what you're putting into it unless you start self-reflecting.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And
yeah.
one thing I think is that the role of the farm wife kind of guides that into place. And that's one thing we haven't asked Tanya yet is what she thinks a farm wife means. We ask everybody this because I want everybody to know, anybody who listens to this, I want them to know how valuable being a farm wife is. It doesn't matter what your capacity of farm wife is. It doesn't matter if you're the farmer. It doesn't matter if you're a full-time farm wife or full-time stay-at-home mom or full-time working. You are a farm wife to some degree. If you listen to my TED Talk, someone at some point used those words to make me believe that my capacity and that I didn't have a role. And so I want anybody who listens to this to hear what outside people think of farm wives and how people really view them. Because the only person who is going to make you feel like your role isn't valuable of a farm wife is someone who's trying to control you or someone who's trying to hurt you.
Yeah. I just love this question because I think I love the point, your goal with asking this question because, gosh, when I think of what is a farm wife, farm wives are the cornerstone. There's so many facets of a farming operation that a farm wife pours into. You are everything from providing a field meal to maybe doing some book work to maybe doing, helping calm your husband down at night when he's super stressed that there's just too much going on. But you are just that steady heartbeat kind of, that sort of calms the storm or provides that cornerstone of the foundation. And so I love that you're trying to paint that picture because farm wives are so much more than just a farm wife. I think that a lot of people are hesitant to claim that title, right?
Right.
They're scared to just embrace that.
Right. Well, I have to say this out loud. It's going to sound so ridiculous. So the reason I call it just a farm wife is to take power away from those words. Just like Hermione Granger says, fear of a name itself only increases the fear of whatever it is. I know the quote, but you know what I'm talking about, right?
Yes, absolutely.
And I always saying just a farm wife, claiming myself as just a farm wife is like saying the word Voldemort out loud.
Yeah. Exactly. No, I think it's great.
I would just taking the reverse. We're taking the power away from it.
Yep, exactly. Yeah. We live in an area where, we are overwhelmingly ag communities, right? And so we have a whole lot of farm wives just in Pembina County alone, right? There's so many farm wives, and imagine the power and the influence that they have on our communities, on our families. Mother Teresa has that quote, something about, if you want to change the world, go home and love your families.
Yes.
And that's what farm wives do. They change the world every day by just being that backbone in their family farm.
Right. And all of that segues into human resources, I feel.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
And Mother Teresa was a great example of that.
Yep.
She really taught people how to love one another and how to build everybody up around you.
Yep.
I've talked about this with another podcast guest. People leave you feeling better. And you women do that for their farm.
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think that if we can find ways to empower them further in the areas where they maybe are hesitant to embrace it, and embrace that title, I think the potential is just limitless, right? In my line of work every day, I have a lot of difficult conversations with people.
I would imagine.
That's what I end up doing a lot of my days, whether it be on the telephone or in person. And I think that when you aren't accustomed to doing them on a regular basis, that's something that I think it's okay to just acknowledge and say, okay, I don't feel very confident to have these difficult conversations because hopefully most of us, unless you're in a field like I am, right, you're not having to have those difficult conversations on a daily basis, right?
Right.
So we don't feel confident when we're doing things that we don't do regularly. That's just common.
And many women generally, this is just generally speaking, this is not all women, have a fear of conflict.
Absolutely.
And will generally shy away when there is a conflict.
Yep, not going to rock the boat.
Yeah, and I'm going to be honest, I did that for a long, long time, and I ended up paying the price for it.
Yes. Yep.
And the longer that you don't deal with it, the more it's going to hurt you.
Absolutely.
It's not going to hurt the other person. It's not going to hurt, well, it might hurt the system.
Right. Yep, overall.
Because you're not dealing with it.
Yep, you're not addressing that problem, whatever it might be. And once you start to realize that and you catch the issues sooner, rather than letting it go and go and go and fester, you start to realize how much better things can be. If you just communicate your feelings or say, hey, this is a concern of mine. Can we talk about this? And just be really open about it.
Right.
Even though it might not seem logical, but I always kind of preach transparency. In HR, people think, oh, there's a lot of secret stuff, but I just preach transparency. You need to be really transparent with people about how you feel.
Right.
Communicate that to them, and everybody is going to be so much better off because then you're all on the same page. You're not on completely different chapters of the book. You're all on the same page, and everybody's in the light, just see the truth.
And that brings people together. And as a leader, maybe that small problem, that small conversation leads to them opening up to you in return.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then that fixes other problems on the back end. It's kind of just a ripple effect.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's how leadership works, right?
Exactly. Yep.
Yeah. And sometimes I do notice that as farm wives, we don't necessarily have the control in those types of things. We are leading at home and we're leading through our farmer husband.
Yeah. Yeah.
But sometimes there's an older generation that you really feel like you don't have any say.
Yeah. Yep.
And you find this in workplaces everywhere. There's generational differences and there's generational ways to communicate and to get people on board to the same page. But even though you may not be leading directly, you are leading through your farmer husband and you are leading through all of those channels. Like they're rippling through you.
Yep. I always say that because I think people will become really discouraged if you dwell on that too much. Like, well,
absolutely.
It doesn't,
I did.
Yeah. It's so easy to just get stuck and think, I really can't make a difference because of all these other layers outside of my control.
Right.
But I kind of preach that you start where you are, and that ripple effect sometimes has a lot more influence than you realize. So if you can start right where you are with your little circle of influence, I run into that in the workplaces a lot. There's maybe a certain team that is having a struggle, but they're really frustrated with the struggles that are outside of their offices. Well, you start with just controlling what you can control. You start there. And if that alone sometimes might bring you peace, if you just recognize and, okay, well, I can control this and that's what I'm going to do. And then you never know. I mean, maybe a year, 2 years, 5 years down the road, look at that. Something's actually changed and you can trace it back to what you started 5 years ago. So,
right, exactly.
Yeah.
And I also want to remind farm wives too that it's important that you focus on yourself and what you're learning and what you're consuming because that will also trickle down, right? So like farm wives, they can learn about this stuff, right? They can learn about human resources and the strategy and they can work on creating their farm's pillars of excellence and all of that stuff, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
You don't have to have everybody on board, right? You just have to start.
Yep, you just have to start. I always say the strategic side of like people management is by far the most exciting for me. I just had to speak at a conference last week in Grand Forks for the North Dakota League of Cities, and it was their annual conference, and I was asked to do 2 presentations. One of them was on compensation plans, which is extremely technical.
Yes.
And I will admit, very boring for me to talk about. I did it, and I was very transparent about that, even when I was speaking. But it's still information we need to know, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So we got through it, and nobody fell asleep, and so we were good. But then later in the day, we talked about succession planning. And so that, to me, is really more pulls into the strategic side of it, right?
Yes.
And so I think family farms definitely need to be thinking about succession planning, right? You've got all these generations that are retiring, and it has to be a constant thought process and a planning process. And it's very strategic. You really have to think about it from a strategic approach. And that session was so much more fun to talk about because I just think the doors are endless, as far as the opportunity out there and how can you shape the future of your farm? How can you bring in or build up the team that you have to fill the gaps that you foresee happening in 5 years to 10 years. We've got somebody retiring who's really good at all the equipment fixing and maintenance and all that. And who's going to fill that gap, And I think as farm wives, there's a lot of potential to fill that role to help really sort of dream big on the strategy side of it.
Right. And expand their horizons.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
Because I feel like farmers, a lot of times they get in their head in the day-to-day operation.
Yep. They're just bogged down with all the day-to-day. Yep.
Yeah. Because,
Yep.
I mean, you have to do that.
Yes.
Those are
Yep.
quite necessary.
Yep.
But you also need the other person in your company
Your operation. Yep.
to be the observer and to start looking at those things and then having those little conversations here and there
Yep.
about the succession planning.
Yep.
Our succession planning as a family was a horrible mess.
Yep.
It was awful.
Yep.
And I would never recommend what we did
Yep.
because we did it out of fear
Right.
and control. And it was a horrible, excruciating experience. And I don't wish that upon anyone. But it did teach me
Yep.
how to do it with my children.
Sure. Yep.
And it made us create systems and it
Yep.
made us have everything in place so that everything is transparent.
Yes.
Everybody knows exactly what's going to happen
Yep.
when it's done.
Yep. Yep. It's all there. It's just everybody's on the same page. Yep.
Yes.
Yep.
But what do you do when you are the observer and you're trying to have these types of conversations and other people are not cooperating?
I think that's going to happen, right?
Right. It is going to
you're
happen
gonna
because
encounter
there's
those challenges.
different
Yep.
personalities.
I say I always lean on communication skills and rephrasing in those moments. And so I like to say to turn it around on that, if people aren't cooperating for whatever reason, ask them those questions. Well, what do you foresee happening, or what do you think is going to be the best plan when so-and-so retires? Or
Sure.
how do you think we're going to fill that gap? What do you think we should do? Sometimes people are resistant because they don't want somebody else to figure it all out.
Sure.
You know what I mean? And so they feel
Well,
like,
it makes them feel inferior, like they don't matter.
Yep. And we all have faults, right?
Yeah.
As human beings. And so we're going to probably encounter that no matter
Yeah,
what. And so
right.
sometimes just flipping it around on them and helping them realize that you have a voice in this. I'm not just calling all the shots, but I'm trying to get the conversation going. Maybe just turning it around like that. Maybe facilitating. If there's anybody that you can think of to bring into your conversation, maybe think about that. Facilitating maybe just a sit-down meeting, Could
Right.
we just sit down and talk about this? Because this
Talk
is
about the hard things.
Yep, let's just talk about
it's
these
okay.
things. It's okay. It's okay to just get those things off. What are you most worried about? What are you, seeing as your biggest concern in 2 years, 5 years, 10 years? Let's talk about those. And that's called a strategic planning session, right?
Right.
And if you name it that sounds big and scary. I think that might be overwhelming for some to just say, can we sit down and have a family strategic planning session on that might be a little bit too formal.
Yeah.
But I preach this in my work all the time. It's just a brainstorming session. That's what it is.
Yeah.
Just sit down together and brainstorm what you foresee are your biggest challenges in the upcoming years ahead and how are we going to overcome those challenges.
Right.
That's really all it is. And so even if you just do it over, a family meal and make it least scary as possible,
Right.
and intimidating as possible. And you might still have some that aren't going to play along.
Yeah, I was going to
Right?
say, we essentially had worst case scenario
Uh-huh.
and the succession was in 1 year
Uh-huh.
and no one communicated.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
We tried to hire a mediator,
Yeah.
but when you have a mediator, you need both parties to agree.
You have to. Yep.
So
Yep. So that didn't work.
it was just one problem after another, after
Yeah.
another, after
Yep.
another. And
Yep.
no one wanted to communicate.
Yeah.
And I am a great communicator, I feel like.
Yeah. Yep.
I'm all
Yeah.
about being transparent and I'm not going to be offended by what you say because those concerns or fears or, invalidation or whatever it
yeah.
is you're feeling, that is valid.
Yeah.
And those are your feelings to have.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yep.
But I can't fix any of those things
Mm-hmm.
or I can't help you work on any of those things if I don't know what they are.
Exactly. Yep.
And there's one thing in farming, do you notice that it's all personal?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So many other corporations and government jobs and those things, like, it's business.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
you're able to take that out of it.
able to
In
separate.
farming,
Yeah.
I notice how everything is personal.
Yeah. I can.
They take everything personal, and then there's an element of survival in it,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Can see that. Yep. Yep.
And so I feel like that puts people on edge
Yeah.
more than they would in a regular setting.
Yeah. And how do you go about navigating that conversation to separate that at all?
Right.
You know, that,
Right.
and I think that's going to be forever challenging because
Yep.
farming itself is their personally owned operations, right? You're invested 100% in that operation.
Right. And your blood, sweat, and tears and time away from your family and everything went into that piece of land and that
Yep.
commodity and
Yep.
everything that came out of it. Like, I get why it feels so personal.
Yeah, absolutely. I do too. And I don't know if you'll ever change that.
Right.
Yeah.
But you need someone in your system to be the observer and be like, okay, I see that you're taking this personally.
Yeah.
How do we have a logical conversation about that?
Well, I'll just speak from my experience. Okay. Sometimes I think finding the right person to communicate that to them might allow them to lower their guard a little bit. I use that strategy sometimes, like, well, I know if you try to talk to this person, it's not going to go well, but so and so could talk to that person and they might be open to receiving it. So it's about kind of identifying the players too.
Sure.
And, you know, knowing who plays best on the playground kind of thing. Like,
Yeah.
you know, capitalizing on the dynamics of each individual relationship. I think that sometimes matters. I don't know. Worst case scenario in this situation, like you explained, the perfect storm situation, I think you're kind of backed up against a wall in those scenarios.
Right.
Like you have to control what you can control ultimately then, and you do the best with what you have. And sometimes that results in really not ideal outcomes or plans. I guess you just do what you do.
So, do you suggest that farmers and farm wives kind of get together once a year to have this conversation?
At a minimum, because I think once a year, probably in a more, I hate to use that term, but more formal kind of, you know, like let's just make sure we kind of map out.
Like in the wintertime.
Yeah, when it's quiet, right?
Right.
But I think that you have to be in that mindset year round, right? Because you
Sure.
can't just sit down once a year and think about what's all happened over the past year
Yeah.
and what you want the next year to look at and actually recall all of that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think you have to really be in that strategic mindset at all times in order to observe the things that you want to bring to the table at that once a year meeting.
Yeah.
I think it's all about a shift in your mindset because
I like that.
I think it's too easy to get into the rut of just, there is so much day to day, right? You're bogged down. And so it's very easy to miss observing some of the things that you should be observing. It's very easy to miss that. And I don't want to come across as like, oh, this is one more thing a farm wife has to do, right? I don't want it to sound like a burden.
No, and to me, it's empowering.
Absolutely.
To me, it's kind of like homework.
Yep.
And it's homework that is going to empower you in the long run.
Absolutely.
So, like what you're saying, you observe those small things. Well, maybe you document them.
Yep. A notebook, like just literally.
Yes.
Yep.
And then it can just be off your mind.
Yep. Yep.
Right?
Exactly.
And then
not
you'll
dwelling
be
on
like,
it.
okay, great. I'm ready for this meeting because I took notes all year.
Yep. Yep.
And so, really, that is not just one more thing to do. That's empowering you and your business to go to the next level.
Yeah, absolutely. And when I don't have a notebook, actual notebook handy, I use notes on my phone a lot.
Oh gosh, I do that all the time.
Like,
I have so many notes.
Yep, I do too. And so just jot something down on, you know, on notes or even voice memos. I've done that where you just leave yourself a voice memo.
Yes.
And it's funny because sometimes I am very surprised by an observation that I had maybe 6 months ago. Like, wow, I was very insightful that day. I was impressed by what I observed that day. Like I was clearly in a at times, much more clear state of mind than maybe I was on the day that I was listening to it. So I was thanking my former self.
Yes, exactly. Oh, I love that. It's just daily journaling, essentially. You're just journaling your farm operation.
Yeah.
And is it hard to sit down and write something in a notebook and journal? Yes.
Yeah.
It is hard because
Yep.
you have kids running every which way.
Absolutely.
And by the time you get to bed, how do you self-reflect?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like you're just like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I just need to go to bed.
Exactly. You don't have the brain power left.
Yes.
At that time of day.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I like to hear you say this because I am doing this. I do write things down like that all the time.
Good deal. Yep.
Yes.
Yep. I think it just provides us the tools that we need later on to have the conversations that we need to have. I mean, and that applies to so many things because I work with a lot of employers, you know, like a supervisor who will say, hi, I'm just struggling with so-and-so. And I'll tell them, just write in your notebook, like the little, because they're like, well, it's not big enough though that I feel like I need to say it to them. It might not be at that moment, but jot it
Right.
down, because when you've jotted that down and you look back and you've got 10 notebook entries that are really similar, the same concern,
Yeah.
that's probably now worth talking about, right?
Right. Well, you're noticing the pattern. Like
Yes.
it helps you notice the patterns of behavior.
Yeah,
Because
exactly.
humans, that's what we are.
Yeah, absolutely.
We are the sum of the patterns of our behaviors.
Yep.
And how do we break those?
Yeah,
And
exactly.
you're right. When you list 10 entries, you're like, oh, yep. I guess this
that's
is a
something we
pattern.
better-
We do need to really talk about this.
Yep, we need to address this. We need to find a solution for it. We need to do something about it because it's not working.
Right.
Yeah, we have those conversations a lot with.
Yeah, I believe it.
Yeah.
And I find that every once in a while, so we have 4 employees and I love them.
Yep.
They are wonderful and they all bring something different to the table.
Yep.
And I feel like that's creating a team.
Absolutely. Yep.
You have to have a team who is skilled at different things in order to make things work really well and really efficiently. And I do notice that when I call them into my office to talk, they always say, I feel like I'm being called to the principal's office.
Yep.
And I haven't quite figured out how to get rid of that.
Yes. That stigma.
Yes.
Yeah, I get the same, obviously. If I have a home office, but I do have like an office location in a couple of places. And so I think it's about presenting yourself as being a very approachable person at all times, right?
Yeah.
I mean, yes, if you're being called into an office, that seems like something formal. What am I in trouble for?
Right.
But I think ultimately, though, if you present yourself to be really approachable, they're going to come to you. That's what I always say. Like, you want to be the type of supervisor or leader in your organization where they're comfortable bringing problems to you. They're comfortable saying, hey, this is really bothering me. Is there something can we talk about this? And I think recognizing your own role in empowering them is huge. I think that when I have somebody come to me and say, so-and-so is just not working out, I want to fire them, something really dramatic like that.
Yes.
My first question is, well, they'll say, well, they're doing this, this, and this. Okay, well, what have you done to help correct any of that?
Right.
A lot of times we have to first look in the mirror to say, what have I done or not done to help fix these issues?
Right.
And that's a hard thing sometimes to hear, right?
Self-reflection is hard.
Yeah, it really
It
is. But the truth is we have a role too, and especially when we have a team beneath us, it's our job to help them succeed, right?
Yes.
And so a lot of times, unfortunately, if they're not successful, it's maybe something we've done or not done with them, so that's
because
always
our success depends on their success.
Yes. Yeah.
So keeping them in their problems is not going to create success for you.
No, not at all. It's not going to bring the whole team the next step further. So I think recognizing that, and a lot of times it's just an inability or a lack of comfort or confidence in helping them fix their problems and mentoring them. That's what a lot of times it's rooted in. I'll say, well, have you had conversations with this employee about that? Well, no, it's just hard to have those conversations. I get it, right? I understand those conversations are hard to have. But the more you have them, the easier it becomes, right? And I'll give them talking tips for how to have hard conversations. Just maybe empowers them to address the issues before you get to the point of extreme frustration and say, this isn't working,
Right, exactly.
I want to part ways kind of thing. But.
Exactly. So do you have any resources that you would give to someone that maybe struggles with conflict or addressing those issues in timely manners, so that it doesn't get bad?
Right. So I guess there's a number of resources. Of course, I work with primarily local government. And so a lot of the resources that come to mind right off the top of my head are related specifically to local government. But I would say just look for training opportunities on things like that, on conflict management, things like that. The Village, you've maybe heard of The Village. It's a counseling agency, but they have something called the VBI, Village Business Institute.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, and they offer a lot of trainings.
Cool.
So I know a lot of the agencies that I work with have a contract with the Village Business Institute for their EAP program, employee assistance programs.
Okay. Yeah.
But there's a lot of trainings offered through them that are dealing with things like conflict management or how to have a difficult conversation with your employee or your peer or, you know.
Well, and it'll even help you with your spouse.
Yes, exactly.
Right.
Exactly. So I would say the first step is recognizing those areas where you don't feel confident,
Yeah.
and then finding ways to build your skill set there.
Right.
I think it's
And
hard.
finding ways to help yourself.
Yeah.
Because
yep.
this is all about helping yourself. I mean, when you help yourself, you help your family.
Yeah.
And
yep.
then you help your business.
Yep. A lot of times I'll sit down with employers, supervisors, and sometimes just having somebody there one time even to have a difficult conversation and seeing how that can be navigated, seeing it play out in a positive way in the end helps you realize, oh, I can do that. I can have that next conversation. I can navigate that. That wasn't so scary or hard. And they didn't
Right.
cry. And sometimes they do, right?
Right.
Part of that is just being real with yourself and telling yourself this person's probably going to cry when I have this conversation.
Right.
And that's okay. I'm just going to expect that. Being realistic about how that conversation is going to unfold. The truth is sometimes they aren't pleasant, in the end.
Right.
And just being honest with yourself about that helps, I think. So
I
that
like
you don't.
that.
Yeah.
I really like that.
Yeah. That's big, I think.
Right.
Sometimes.
Yes, I like that. And allowing the other person to be honest too, because sometimes when someone comes to us with something, maybe we've already created this great positive relationship, but then they come to us with something hard.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And they come to us with something that we are doing.
Yeah.
Like,
right.
where are we going to be at
Yeah.
in that? How do we make sure that we're at the right headspace
Yeah.
in
Yep.
order to hear that instead of taking it personally?
Right.
And
And that's hard, isn't it?
it is.
I think that sometimes it's best, what I have maybe recommended in the past is if you feel yourself almost getting, defensive or taking something personally, maybe don't explore that conversation in depth at that moment. Say, I'm really interested to hear what you say and I'd like to talk about this further. Can we just set a time to meet next week? And then you almost kind of get over the initial shock of it. And maybe
Sure.
you're able to get your headspace in a better place,
Yeah.
to have that conversation
Right.
and be more open to hearing what they have to say, because
Right.
you're not going to truly hear what they have to
Right.
say when you start putting your defenses up, right?
Right.
And we're human beings, right? It's not easy to hear
No.
what we're doing wrong or how we're falling short or
Right.
how we're
Right.
not meeting that person's expectations.
Right.
That's not an easy thing for us to hear. So
No, it's not. But it happens.
yeah, absolutely.
I mean, it happens in
Yep.
every type of business, not just farming.
Yep. Everywhere you go. It's just human nature.
Right.
We're not going to please everyone. In fact, early on in my HR career, I was at a conference and I don't remember what the gentleman was even speaking about. I couldn't tell you at all, but he had a slide up on the screen and it's something to the effect of trying to please everyone is a sign of mediocrity. And that has stuck with me so much because in HR, I don't please everybody.
Right.
They're not going to be happy
Right.
with everything I have to say or do. It's just the fact of life. I'm really big on just treating everybody with kindness and respect, no matter what, right?
Right.
Even though you don't like what I have to say right now, or maybe you're really not doing your job at all, and
Yeah.
ultimately we have to part ways, you're still a human being who deserves dignity and respect. And I'm going to treat you with kindness every step of the way until you're out the door. And so
Right.
I'm really big on that. And there's been times where I have, had to be a part of letting somebody go because they're not really a good fit. And I feel like I've done my job when a couple years later, that same individual, we were at a banquet, like a banquet that benefits an organization.
Oh, sure.
And that same individual and his wife came and willingly sat at the table with me and my group,
Oh,
and
yeah.
we had a lovely evening and conversation. And
Yep.
so I feel good about that when I know that he still knows that I would love to have him at my table, and
Right.
I would enjoy his company.
Right.
But I think that's an important piece of all that we do in working with everybody. And I think that in a family farming operation, like you said, everything is so personal. It's just by nature going to be so personal. And so there's a lot of opportunities for potential internal conflict.
Right.
And ultimately remembering that, hey, these are all people that I still love at the end of the day. There's still people that I am going to do my best to show that I care about them
Right.
and that they're somebody, a respectable human being. So,
Right.
yeah.
No, I think that's really important.
Yeah.
I think that's awesome.
Yeah.
Good advice. Good advice. And I thought of another question and I forgot it now.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
This is my next question.
Okay.
So what advice do you have for starting out and implementing strategic planning in your day-to-day operation?
Okay.
I know my husband and I have conversations every single morning,
Yep.
usually, and then throughout the day, there will be a few more conversations just about balancing how things are going to look and
Yeah.
what the needs are
Yep.
of the day.
Yep. So I think like to really truly start out those conversations or that mentality, you have to assess what or who are the critical pieces of our operation, right?
Okay.
Knowing who or what those critical pieces are helps you ensure that they're never going to fall through the cracks.
Sure.
And so if there might be critical people, you know, that if this person were not here, our operation would not be operating, right? Like
Sure.
operations would cease. Or maybe there's a critical task or function that they perform that operations are going to be, you know, not working if that task is not being performed. And knowing that you've got that covered at all times, you know. So
Sure.
if that person is not there or something, God forbid, happened to that person, what can we do to ensure that our operation continues?
Yep.
Who's cross-trained? Who can handle those tasks? Who can cover the bases there
Yep.
to ensure that things keep going, you know, from a very technical side of it, like payroll, right? If there's nobody to process paychecks, people are probably going to start to get frustrated, right?
Right.
And not saying they're just going to walk away after they miss one paycheck, but you know what I mean?
Yes.
It's kind of those critical tasks and functions of your operation that you need to know are covered. And so it's a matter of knowing who or what those tasks are, right? Who performs them and what those tasks are. And looking ahead, like, yeah, we don't have any concerns in the near future, right? Those
Right.
things are covered. But what does the long, you know,
Long-term plan look like?
2 years,
Yeah.
5 years, and getting in the habit of just having conversations about it.
Right.
Because, like I said, I think it's way too easy to get bogged down in the day to day. There's too many things on my to-do list today. We're not going to pause and have conversations, you know, about
Right.
things like
Exactly.
that. So it's making it the norm to talk about
Right.
those things.
Right. Well, and
regularly.
it reduces the mental load too
Yeah.
if you already have this plan in place
Yep.
that you know that this is going to be covered no matter what.
Yep. Takes a huge load. I mean, it helps you focus more on the day to day because
Right.
you don't have the big things looming at the back of your mind. Like,
Right.
oh goodness, you know, if something happened, I don't know what we'd do. That's stressful to have that looming at the back of your mind.
Right.
But it's a matter of having those conversations. I will say that NDSU Extension is an excellent resource for strategic planning.
Okay.
They actually have a presenter, and I can't think of her name off the top of my head. I apologize, but just look into NDSU Extension. I'm sure any of those agents would help you out. But she actually presented at that same conference I was at last week, and she talked
cool.
about strategic planning. Yeah. And I actually was able to sit in on a strategic planning session once for a county government. And I'm not sure if it was the same woman because this was many years ago, but I was so impressed with them just helping lay out, you know. So if you're interested in really truly just diving into creating a strategic plan, I think NDSU Extension would be an awesome resource to provide some.
Well, or
support
any
there.
extension. If you are listening to this from a different state, just contact your local
Yep.
university extension office and they'll be
Absolutely.
able to direct you. So
Yep,
this
they're-
is not just North Dakota specific.
Yes, exactly. Yes. Yeah, they are just an awesome resource. I'm a huge supporter of extension programs in general,
Me too.
especially for the agriculture sector. I just think that they are phenomenal. So I'm always wanting to put a plug in for them, but you don't think of them necessarily for things like that.
Right. I wouldn't have. I mean, I took Annie's project and they helped me a ton with that.
Yep.
But the rest has been a lot of just trial and error
Yeah.
and figuring it out on my own.
Right. Yep.
And
Yep.
that can be overwhelming. So I think this is really awesome to have a place to start.
Yep.
Because when you're in the middle of chaos and you know you're in the middle of chaos, it's a little bit overwhelming to be like, how do I even start?
Yep.
I want to change. I'm ready.
Yep.
How? I
Yeah,
don't
yeah.
understand the how.
Yeah.
You know, and then you can get stuck in your head about that.
Absolutely.
I mean,
yeah.
I have done it. So
Yeah, exactly. It really boils down to sitting down and identifying those critical tasks or critical people
Yep.
in your operation, and then figuring out where you have gaps.
Yeah.
You know, like do the gap analysis. Okay, well, we would have these critical tasks covered, but these 3 or 4, yeah, what would we do? And
Right.
And then just assessing those gaps, figuring out, well, what are our options for this particular issue, and just doing that gap analysis and then getting your final plan. But then at the end, it's all about communicating that final plan, right?
Right.
Making sure everybody's on that same page. And then you
Right.
can tweak and you can adjust or
Yeah, I was
whatever.
going to
but
say, I'm pretty sure those final plans change.
absolutely they do.
It'll just
Yeah,
keep
it's gonna be
changing with the evolution of your farm.
Absolutely.
But
Yep.
when you release the burden of certain tasks
Mm-hmm.
and certain problems, it allows your brain to open up to really create something different. And that's why those plans change. I
Yep.
mean, it's good to have the plan, but
But it's not just going to be something that you stick on the shelf and it
No,
gets dusty.
no,
It's constantly evolving.
yes,
And
constantly.
it needs to, because that means you're growing, right?
Yes.
You want it to change. You want to have to adapt it because, like, oh, wow, we've added 3 more critical tasks to our operation. I mean, that's a great thing. That's a good
Right.
problem to have, right?
Right.
Yeah.
I
So,
love that. Awesome. Cool.
Yeah.
Is there any other advice that you would have? I feel like there's so much to cover.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yep.
we could probably do another episode on
Right.
anything specific. So, listeners, if you have anything specific that you want Tanya to talk about, please send me a message, because she's just an amazing wealth of knowledge. Or you could just contact her at her business. And I just love having her on here.
Yeah.
It's
Well,
fun.
thank you. It's fun. I just can't emphasize enough the power of communication. I guess in the end, I think that's what I do every day, right? If you say, like, what's that cornerstone skill set that everybody needs, no matter what job you hold, no matter what you do in life, I preach this to my kids: know how to communicate with others, and
Yes.
to communicate well, and to articulate your concerns, your needs,
Feelings. Yeah.
Yeah. I have one child, well, 2 probably, honestly, where this does not come naturally to them, and so
Sure.
I'm a big proponent of 4-H, right? Like, my kids grew up in
Yes.
4-H, and I know 2 of the 3 that where it doesn't come naturally to them, we would focus on those communication arts contests and things like that,
Yes.
because I know it's not comfortable for you, my daughter, but
That's how you
it's-
grow.
Yeah, this is something, being pushed outside of your comfort zone that's where growth happens. On the edge of that comfort zone is where you begin to grow. And so we preach that a lot in our household. So
I love that.
Yeah.
2 of my kids, 2 out of the 4, struggle with the communication side.
Yep.
Yeah.
And it just opens so many more doors if you
does.
can communicate, and
Yes.
if you work on that skill set, even if it doesn't come naturally to you. And
Yes.
my oldest, she's one personality wise, it doesn't come natural, and she's doing awesome.
She was pushed to
Yeah.
grow. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's partly actually why my girls do pageants,
Yeah. Yep.
is because of the communication, and communication in a very public manner
Yes.
is
Yep.
hard.
It is. It's very hard. Yep.
And it's just so awesome to see even just tiny bits of progress
Yeah.
every
Yep.
single time they do it.
Yep.
Because it's also training your mindset, right? To know that, okay, yep, I'm uncomfortable.
Yep. I'm going to do it.
Woohoo! I can get through this. I can do
scary
it.
things.
Yeah,
Yep.
exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, if you grew up in a house that, maybe didn't value those things and silenced your feelings, like that can be an incredibly hard thing to do, is speak
Yeah.
your mind about your own feelings,
Yeah.
and to get uncomfortable, because you generally associate being uncomfortable with being silenced.
Yeah.
And so that you don't think that your opinion or your voice matters. I just can't stress enough how important a woman's voice is in her operation,
Absolutely.
and the love and life that she really can speak. And that's it. Like, that's
Yep.
all you're doing, is you're speaking it
Yeah.
into your family
Yeah,
farms.
you're just breathing that in and pouring into everybody. And I agree. It's immeasurable, I think, the impact that farm wives have on their operation, and they
Right.
don't even see it.
Right.
There's so many that just don't recognize that.
Right.
The impact that they're having every single day.
Right. Well, and a lot of times you're dealing with all men. A lot of farms, it's the men who farm. Some farms, it's women, which I think is awesome.
Yep.
I guess in our farm, it's all men.
Yep.
And learning how to communicate with men, it's communication on steroids, because you're also dealing with communicating with your spouse. You're communicating with men. You're communicating with men of a different culture because
Right.
some farms employ people from different countries.
Yep.
You have to understand the other person's culture
Yep.
and what they came from in order to learn how to communicate
Yeah.
effectively with them.
Yep. It's a whole nother dynamic,
It is.
Yeah.
And then the
Yep.
generational dynamics and understanding all of those layers.
Yes. And becoming skilled enough in understanding them that you yourself, I'm going to use my husband as an example. He's a very black and white person, right?
Yeah.
Just very black and white, very direct.
Yeah.
I used to, in my younger years, get easily offended by like bluntness or that black
Sure.
and white,
Yes.
and recognizing that no, this is just how this is how he communicates. This is how he was made,
Yes.
and so he's not going to be offended by me just saying something really blunt and black and white and clear. In fact, he appreciates that. Like,
Right. He
I
doesn't
want-
have to sort through
yeah.
the niceties.
Yes. And so like I used to have a tendency of, if it's something that I know he's not going to want to hear, there's something that maybe we are going to do as a family that he's not really keen on or something like that, right?
Yeah.
I would sort of like have a tendency of tiptoeing around it or, saying it in a way that makes it sound more appealing or something like that.
Right.
He would appreciate just knowing, this is what it is. This is what we're doing. We're
This
going to
is
be
the expectation.
Yep.
This is what you need to do.
Yep.
And then we're just done.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
that's understanding those relationship dynamics. And
Yes.
on a family farm operation, like you said, you have so many of those, right? You've got
Right.
the generational, maybe you've got the cultural, you've got all of that. So you really do have to become sort of a master, by nature, they become master communicators because I think females, generally speaking, are stronger at that. We have an innate sense of reading others maybe better than males. That's just a general statement. So that's not
Right.
meant to be offensive at all. But I
Right.
think that generally speaking, we're just a little bit better at that.
Right.
So I think it's important for, farm wives to recognize that that can be a really impactful role that you have in your operation is kind of learning the ins and outs of all those relationship dynamics and how best to communicate with one another.
Right. Maybe you don't have to have the conversation with that person yourself.
Right.
But you can instruct
Yeah.
your spouse or another team leader that you have on how to address
Yeah.
that subject. In my TED Talk, I kind of talk a little bit about the farm wife being the human resource department.
Yeah.
Like, that's you, honey.
Yep.
Like, it's
Yep.
and
Yep.
it all trickles. We've talked about this too. Like, it all trickles down from you. Like, you're teaching other people how to communicate. You're teaching your team how to communicate.
Yeah.
Like
You're setting
You're
the bar.
and
yeah,
you're speaking
yeah.
a universal language.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
becoming that master communicator. Like it's essentially a universal language.
Yeah.
And it just ebbs and flows
Yeah.
how you need it. But yes, you need to be able to read people and understand the dynamics and maybe take those extra trainings, in order to hone it if it feels uncomfortable to you.
Right.
And, say you have a conversation and it doesn't go well because that is going to happen.
Yeah, it is. It is.
What do you take from it?
Yeah.
Do you take from it, oh, I did a bad job, I can't do this anymore? Or do you take from it, oh, hey, that didn't go well.
Yeah.
I could do this differently.
But there's times I think you have to, how do you define that didn't go well?
Oh, yeah.
I can be really quick to say, ugh, that was rough or that was terrible.
Right.
But I think that's where you go back to being realistic about your expectations. Because let's be honest, some of those conversations are not going to go well, in quotations, right?
Right.
Because the person you're speaking to may not be just happy to hear what you have to say, right? And that's just the reality of it. And that's okay. At times, we still have to say those things to them,
Right.
whether they want to hear it or not, right?
Right.
And being realistic. Like I have sat down with supervisors and say, I think it's very possible this employee is going to break out in tears and it's okay. That's okay. That person's emotions and they can own those emotions and that's fine, right? It doesn't mean we have to necessarily stop what we're telling them or change our tune,
Right. We still have to be honest no matter
Yeah.
what at the
Yep.
end of the day.
Yep. And so being really realistic about the expectations. And so, maybe they do cry or maybe they do get really angry. That doesn't mean it didn't go well, right? I think you have to
Right.
think about the objective of that conversation. Did you communicate what you needed to communicate? Did you achieve anything in doing so?
Did you treat that person with kindness and respect?
Yeah, ultimately, that's always what I say. I mean, because there's still a human being on the other side of the table at all times, right? And so even though they might not be meeting our expectations or whatever is going on, ultimately, if you can treat them with kindness and respect and you just address whatever it is you need to address in that moment, then I think you can say it did go well, right?
Yeah.
Like, I guess be careful about jumping to conclusions. Yes.
Really great advice.
Yeah. And is it draining? Yes. Right. There's been times
Right.
where it's like, oh, wow, it was a very draining day, because you really do have to pour a lot of yourself out into those conversations.
Yeah.
And it can feel very vulnerable. It can feel very draining. But ultimately, then I find anyway that you just feel just good about it at the end a lot of times, because you know what? We said what we needed to say. We addressed the problems. And I mean, we had an employee in one agency I can think of recently. This was probably 6 to 9 months ago. And that supervisor had attempted to speak to this employee multiple times. It didn't work. We kind of sat down and had one last conversation. And in that conversation, that employee admitted, I feel like I maybe need to get back on some, I think at that time it was like ADD meds or something like that. But that employee became comfortable enough to just start that conversation with us. And she has become a great employee. And I mean, we were ready to just say this isn't working out. We're going to part ways, but completely turned around, and she's one of the best employees in that department. But it took some pouring into her, right? And working with her and mentoring her
and making her feel comfortable enough to open up to you and to realizing that
there was some things that she needed to work on, and we couldn't help her with those things,
Right.
And she got the help that she needed, and it's completely turned around. And so those are kind of the feel-good stories for you, in the end. You think like, hey, we helped her succeed. We poured into her like we needed to.
And it was the hard conversation that maybe at the end of the day, you were like, oh, that did not go well. That was hard.
Yeah, exactly.
I really like that perspective, because I am generally the person to be harder on myself and be like, oh, well, that didn't go well. I didn't do that quite right. What can I do better? But yeah, maybe that is what it is. Like, I spoke respectfully. I empowered them to make a decision. But what they hear is just their own perception of their own things that are going on in their own lives sometimes. And so the long advice too is to don't take it on yourself. And be so hard on yourself and make it personal about you.
You have to learn to separate that. And that's a learning process. I used to be not very good at it, in all honesty. Like, it used to really drain me more than it should be, but there comes a point in time where you have to recognize that there's a separation and not take it all on yourself personally. Their issues are their problems. I mean, recognizing that they have to own them. You can't,
Right. Your responsibility is you. Just like your employee's responsibility, their responsibility is them. And sometimes in farming, I feel like we tend to put a personal reflection on it too, right? And I don't know if regular businesses do that, but in farming, I feel like there's a personal reflection of your employees out into the community too. So like you take it a little bit differently.
Yeah, I can see that. Yeah. And I think businesses in general, perhaps have some of that as well.
Yeah. But that's it. That's all, folks. It's the communicating, right?
Yep, absolutely.
And having these hard conversations. One last thing, I guess, do you have anything else?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
I can talk about this stuff like all day. Like I said, I have a lot of hard conversations every day, every week. And so a lot of people think that they're, scary and, I don't know how you do that, but it's recognizing that they're not necessarily mine to own, right?
Right.
And so I really enjoy just walking alongside people and, helping maybe look at something from a different perspective and maybe say it in this way and they're not going to become so defensive, just tips like that.
Love that.
Yeah.
I love that. Yeah. Well, if you enjoyed this episode talking about human resources with Tanya, you can contact her. She has a website, Dakota Dynamics.
Tanya at dakotadynamics.com is my email. And that's the best way to reach out to me, probably.
Yeah. Fantastic.
Yeah.
Thank you for that, Tanya.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for this amazing episode. I feel like there is so much value in everything that we talked about. And I hope that you love this and it can help you in any type of way. If you have any other subjects that you would like us to talk about, please reach out to me. You can DM me on Instagram or Facebook. You can kind of find me everywhere.
Yeah.
So thank you very much, Tanya, and have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to today's episode. And remember, you're never just an anything.